Our movies, our comic books, our video games are full of them. In real life, we look to peacemakers, artists, movie stars, and politicians, and we idolize them. We're equally fascinated by people who perform miracles. When Christ walks on water or brings Lazarus back from the dead, he's considered the Son of God. In India, Sai Baba would produce a watch out of thin air or ash from his photo, and people thought of him as God. Modern, educated people look down on such quote-unquote foolishness, but they in turn make science their God and are awed by the miracles of technology, medicine. We're all the same, really. We want something or someone to look up to worship, to adore. It could be a lover. It could be a child. It could be a sunset. What are miracles anyway, if not unusual events that we didn't think were possible? We don't consider things like the sunset or rain or snow as miraculous. When we see a seed turn into a flower or tree, we accept this as normal. When we see birds fly and squirrels climb trees, we barely look. When we look at ourselves in the mirror, we see the pimples, the excess fat, or the wrinkles. But we look past the miracle that is happening right under our noses. Not literally, I don't mean our mouth, I mean our body. The people and the animals all around us, nature in all its glory. We look past the most amazing miracle of all, the miracle that thousands of scientists have been studying and trying to replicate for hundreds of years. And yet we haven't got anywhere. We've made big, bulky, polluting airplanes and cars, fascinating computers and phones, but nothing can outdo the capabilities of the human body and brain. Even the tiny mosquito puts our drones to shame. Humans might be able to blast an atom or make a nuclear bomb, but can they make an atom? Humans might be able to code AI, but can they code the DNA from scratch? We're terrible copycats, but I digress. Today we will hear about the superhuman, supernatural, astounding miracles performed by the Supreme Godhead, the creator of trillions of galaxies, who is simultaneously seated in everyone's heart, and at the same time is present as the energy, the wave, the particle that makes up the atoms, the protons and quarks, which are the building blocks of the universe. Yet he is a being, the most beautiful, wise, and powerful being, who appeared in his original transcendental spiritual form on this earth 5,000 years ago, performed wondrous acts that delight us even to this day. There is, in my opinion, no greater miracle than this. So this is Krishna. The Supreme Being as he appeared 5,000 years ago, along with his brother Balaram. And they were in this little village of Vrindavan, place in India. Now, we've been talking about his pastimes, and let's continue. One day, Krishna happened to see the men of his village, Vrindavan, very busily arranging for a sacrifice to Indra. Now, some of you might know who Indra is, and some of you might not. So let's take a look at some pictures. Some depictions of Indra. And interestingly enough, you're going to find this same idea present in different parts of the world. Indra is known to be the God of okay, so there is the idea of the supreme being God, and then there's the idea of the demigods, the devas. And the devas are in charge of the creation. They are not God. A lot of people misunderstand that. A lot of people think that there are hundreds of thousands of gods in Hinduism, but there aren't. There is one God. And there are many devas, many entities who have been empowered to take care of the creation. Just like you have the president, right? And then you have so many people in Congress running the show, and all the mayors in the cities, and all the governors, and so on and so forth. They're taking care of the affairs of state. The president doesn't do all that. The CEO of the company doesn't do all that. It doesn't make sense that God is going to look after every single person and every little bit of detail all over the universe. There are billions and billions of living entities, from human to alien to animals to all kinds of species. You expect one God to do that, he'd go crazy, right? So he has delegated that, and Indra is the head of the demigods, the devas. Now, Indra is also in charge of some functions, which is like rain and thunder and lightning and various things. And this idea has also been spoken of in cultures across the world. So you'll see it in the Mesoamerican Olmec, he was called, and he looks very similar to Indra. In fact, he has 4 hands as well. Then if you go further, you'll see him in Zeus. Again, the same ideas, the same weapons, the same everything. I'll do a whole detailed video one day about all that and fill you in on all the similarities. And then you have here, if you look at Zeus, Indra, and Thor, they're all very similar. Quite. Their weapons, so many other details about them are similar. All right, so being omniscient, the Supreme Lord Krishna already understood the situation. Yet he humbly asked from the elders, headed by his father, King Nanda, he says, "My dear father, kindly explain to me, what is this great endeavor of yours? What is it all about? What is it meant to accomplish? Is this a ritual sacrifice that you're doing? And for whose satisfaction is it intended? And by what means is it going to be executed?" By the way, Krishna at this point is just 7 years old. There's some pretty wise questions coming out of a little kid. Then he goes on with great humility, inquiring, "I have a great desire to know," Krishna says, "and I am ready to hear in good faith. Certainly, no secrets are to be kept by saintly persons like yourself, who see all others as equal to themselves, who have no conception of mine or another's, who do not consider who is a friend, who is an enemy, and who is neutral." So Krishna is actually talking about some very wise stuff. He's talking about the qualities of a saintly person. And that is to see all others as equal to themselves, to have no conception of mine or yours. They do not consider who is a friend, who is an enemy, and who is neutral, right? Neither friend nor enemy. So these are very evolved qualities of saintly people that most people don't even realize, even when they're adults. What are the qualities of a saintly person? If you'd ask yourself that, like if someone came along and said, "Oh, this person's a great guru, a teacher, a prophet, or whatever," but what are the qualities of such a person? How do I recognize them? How do I know that it's not all a bunch of show just because everybody believes something or someone that that's who it is? No. Here he's giving you the qualities. He says that a saintly person sees all others as equal to themselves. They have no conception of this is mine and this is yours. And neither do they consider someone a friend or an enemy. So think about if you've met anybody like that. And if you haven't, you probably haven't met a very saintly person. But they do exist. I can promise you that. I have met them. And it's pretty amazing when you do, because when you're in their presence, it's like you're just so uplifted. You feel happy for no reason. You feel peaceful. There's an energy exuding from them. And it's just the most incredible thing in the world. Now, Krishna continues, one who is neutral, if you don't know where they're coming from, should be avoided like an enemy. But a friend should be considered like one's own self. So now he's kind of appealing to his father to talk to him. He says, if you consider me your friend, then you should tell me. You should consider me like yourself. Then he goes on to say, when people in the world perform activities, sometimes they understand what they're doing and sometimes they don't. So now he's kind of needling him a bit. Do you really know what you're doing, and do you know why you're doing it? Because these people had rituals that they were doing for hundreds, maybe thousands of years. And this ritual that they were doing was performed to Indra so that they would get rain. But Krishna is challenging that. He says, those who know what they're doing achieve success in their work, whereas ignorant people do not. Therefore, this ritualistic endeavor of yours should be clearly explained to me. Is it a ceremony based on scripture, or simply a custom of ordinary society? So now Nanda, Krishna's father, thinks, all right, I better answer this kid. He's like really digging away. So he says, the father says, the great king Indra is the controller of rain. The clouds are his personal representatives, and they directly provide rainwater, which gives happiness and sustenance to all creatures. Not only we, my dear son, but also many other people worship him. He is the Lord and Master of the rain-giving clouds. We offer him grain and other paraphernalia of worship produced through rain. So, what do you think? If what we're looking for, if what people want is rain, if what people want is something that is going to take care of their crops, and they have the agenda that they want to, satisfy the person that provides the rain. But Krishna is not happy with this answer. He is going to challenge this. Nanda continues. He says, by accepting the remnants of sacrifice performed to Indra, people sustain their lives and accomplish the aims of religiosity, economic development, and sense gratification. Thus, Indra is the agent responsible for our success. This religious principle is based on sound tradition. Anyone who rejects it out of lust, enmity, fear, or greed will certainly fail to achieve good fortune. So what he's referring to is this. He's saying that if you want these four things, dharma, artha, kama, and moksha, right? What are these four things? So dharma refers to if you want to perform religious activities, you want to do the right thing, you want to be a good human being, right? Then you follow the path of dharma. Why do you do that? So that you may have artha. By being a good person, by doing good deeds, you get wealth. It comes from good karma. And why would you want wealth? So that you can enjoy kama, which is your sense gratification. So you can enjoy your senses. But is that the goal of life? Well, no. These three are just the parts that allow us to sustain ourselves. But the ultimate goal of life is moksha, liberation, salvation as some call it, right? Liberation, salvation, that is the ultimate goal of human life. An animal cannot perform activities that lead to salvation or liberation, but a human can. So, Krishna's father is now saying that this is why we do this, so that we can provide for our families, so that we can take care of our animals, right? But Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 7, text number 20, he says, Kamaistaster hritagyana prapatyante anya devata. Only those who have lost their intelligence because of various material desires surrender unto the demigods. Who is the demigod that is being talked about now? Indra. So only those who have lost their intelligence because of material desire. So what most of us are in that category. We have material desires, and when we have material desires, we lose track of our ultimate interest. So we lose our intelligence. We lose our bearings, that life is not just about to eat, drink, and be merry, about kama, about enjoying the senses, but rather is about moksha, is about liberation. So Persons who have lost their intelligence because of various material desires surrender unto demigods rather than worship the Supreme Lord. In fact, the demigods cannot award benefits to anyone independently, right? All benefits are ultimately issued by God Himself. So who should one worship then, according to this? One should worship God, the Supreme Being, or Krishna as we call Him. When Krishna heard the statements of his father and other senior residents of the village of Vrindavan, he spoke as follows, to arouse the anger of Indra. Krishna is not, he's got an agenda here. He's got a purpose. He wants to anger Indra. He wants to inflame Indra's ego. Indra might think of himself as a very powerful being, the king of the heavenly planets. He may think of himself, just like we have the president of the United States, right? Considered the most powerful country in the world, supposedly. So he may have a lot of pride and arrogance if someone has that position. Indra is a person, a being like you and me, but who has been elevated to a very high position to be the king of the heavenly planets. America is also considered a heavenly planet. It's very beautiful. It's very everything, is just great. And so the president would be compared to the king of the heavenly planets. But there are many other planets besides this one. There are many other alien beings living on those planets, and many of them far more beautiful and powerful and capable than us humans. So Indra is that. Now, he goes on to another angle. Krishna uses various angles with which to convince his father. Now he says, it is by the force of karma that a living entity takes birth, and it is by karma alone that he sustains himself and ultimately meets his destruction or death. His happiness, distress, fear, and sense of security are all the effects of karma. Even if there is some supreme controller who awards everyone their karma, he must also depend upon a performer's engaging in activity. After all, if there is no question of being the bestower of karmic results unless karmic activities have actually been performed. Right? I mean, this is like a really tricky argument. He's basically saying that, hey, if I didn't do anything, if I don't perform any karma, then if there is someone who awards the results of karma, well then that person couldn't reward me with anything, either positive or negative, but I didn't do anything at all. I'm not engaged in karma. Of course, in the Gita, he says nobody can refrain from doing something. You got to do something. Just to be able to live, just to be able to survive, you have to do something. You can't do nothing. But he's using these arguments with his father. Then he says, living beings in this world are forced to experience the consequences of their deeds. Since Indra cannot in any way change the destiny of human beings, which is born of their own nature, why should people worship him? Now in the purport it is explained, Krishna minimized the importance of the demigods by speaking the philosophy known as karmavad or karma mimamsa, which basically is atheism with a belief in reincarnation. According to this philosophy, there are subtle laws of nature that reward or punish us according to how we act. As you sow, so shall you reap. In a future life, one reaps the fruit of his present work, and in this is the sum and substance of reality. Krishna, being God himself, could hardly be a serious proponent of this mediocre philosophy. In the role of a young boy, he was simply teasing his pure devotees by teaching or trying to use it. Srila Jiva Goswami points out that Krishna was thinking, why are these eternal associates of mine, my father, my relatives and friends, because they're all eternal associates of Krishna who have come with him to this earth to perform these pastimes. So why are they so caught up in this worship of Indra? Thus, although Krishna's main purpose was to take away the false pride of Indra, he also wanted to remind his eternal devotees that they need not divert their attention to so-called other gods, since in fact his devotees were already living with him, who was the supreme absolute truth, the Almighty Lord himself. So now Krishna continues again with some additional arguments. He says, every living entity is under the control of his own conditioned nature. right? We're all conditioned beings. And everyone therefore follows their own nature. This entire universe with all its demigods, demons, and human beings is based on the conditioned nature of the living entities. Because it is karma that causes the conditioned living entity to accept and then give up different high and low grade material bodies, this karma is his enemy, his friend and neutral witness, his spiritual master and controlling Lord. So he says basically it's karma that is the culprit, is the enemy. Therefore, one should seriously worship work itself. A person should remain in the position corresponding to his nature and should therefore perform his duty. Indeed, that by which we may live nicely is really our worshipable deity. So he's saying now, work is worship. He's using that argument. If one thing is actually sustaining our life, but we take shelter of something else, well, how can we achieve any real benefit? This would be like an unfaithful person who can never achieve any actual benefit by consorting with their paramour. You know, like if you're married to someone and then you're off with a lover, a paramour, well, then what's the benefit? There's no benefit to the paramour and there's no benefit to you in your relationship. You're just messing everything up and creating the grounds for which that, the whole marriage and your relationship will break apart. It's complete foolishness. Then he continues, the Brahmin maintains his life by studying and teaching the Vedas. The member of the royal family or the royal order protects the earth, and the business person, Vaishya, through trade, and the Shudra, that is, by serving everyone. The occupational duties of the business person, the Vaishya, are conceived in 4 divisions: farming, commerce, cow protection, and money lending. Now, that's what it was back then, but today business could be any number of things. Now he's talking to his father, of course, and he's talking about their business, which is farming and cow protection and so on. He says, out of these, we as a community are always engaged in cow protection. So, of course, they were a dairy community. They raised cows, milked them, sold the butter, the ghee, and all of that. It was made from those cows, from the cow milk. The causes of creation, maintenance, and destruction are the 3 modes of nature, namely goodness, passion, and ignorance. In particular, the mode of passion creates this universe and through sexual combination causes it to become full of variety. Impelled by material mode of passion, the clouds pour down their rain everywhere, and this rain, all creatures gain their sustenance. What has the great Indra to do with this arrangement? My dear father, our home is not in the cities or towns or villages. Being forest dwellers, we live in a small village. We always live in the forest and on the hills. Therefore, now Krishna comes up with his plan. Therefore, let there be a sacrifice for the pleasure of the cows, the priests, the Brahmins, and Govardhan Hill. Now, Govardhan Hill is where they would take the cows to graze. Right? So the hill is providing the grass is feeding the cows, and therefore we should worship that which is providing our sustenance. That's what he's arguing. With all the paraphernalia collected for worshipping Indra, let this sacrifice be performed instead. Let many different kinds of foods be cooked, from sweet rice to vegetable soups. Many kinds of fancy cakes, both baked and fried, should be prepared, and all the available milk products should be taken and presented as an offering to the hill, to Govardhan Hill. And the Brahmins, the priests, should chant Vedic mantras and properly invoke the sacrificial fires. And then as you feed the priests, you must also reward the cows and prepare wonderful foods as an offering to Govardhan Hill. After everyone has eaten to their satisfaction, you should all dress and decorate yourselves handsomely, smear your bodies with sandalwood paste, and then circumambulate, go around the cows, the Brahmins, and the sacrificial fires, and Govardhan Hill. This is my idea, O Father, and you may carry it out if it appeals to you. Such a sacrifice may be very dear to the cows, the Brahmins, and also to me. So what he's basically saying, I'm going to cut to the chase here, is, hey, instead of worshipping Indra, worship the cows, worship the hill that provides the food for the cows, and the priests, the Brahmins who perform all these rituals, right? Forget Indra. There's no need to worship him. He really is out to aggravate Indra. Krishna desired to destroy the false pride of Indra. When his father, King Nanda, and the senior residents of the town Vrindavan heard Krishna's statement, they accepted his idea. They just loved him. They're like, okay, he's so smart, whatever he says. Then they arranged for the Brahmins, the priests, to recite the auspicious Vedic mantras and use the paraphernalia that had been intended for Indra as offerings, as Krishna had suggested. As the beautifully ornamented cowherd ladies followed along riding on wagons drawn by oxen, they sang the glories of Krishna, and their songs mingled with the Brahmins' chanting of mantras. Krishna then assumed an unprecedented huge form to instill faith in the cowherd men, declaring, "I am Govardhan Hill." And then he ate the abundant offerings. I think I should show you some pictures at this point. So this is Govardhan Hill today. It's not huge. In fact, it's said to have been gradually sinking down into the earth. That's another view. And people actually circumambulate this. I've actually gone around Govardhan Hill. It's about 14 kilometers around, possibly 9 to 10 miles. That's a long walk. And people walk it barefoot. Usually early in the morning, because it can get pretty hot during the day. So, yeah, that's Govardhan Hill for you. And these are the kind of vehicles, either the cows pulling the sort of bullock cart in the back. And it would have been something like this. So all of them went, and Krishna then created this lovely form of his, where he became like this huge, gigantic form to accept all the offerings. An unprecedented, huge form to instill faith in the cowherd men, declaring, "I am Govardhan Mountain." And then he accepted all the offerings, all the things that they had brought. This Govardhan Hill, assuming any form he wishes, will kill. Okay, so then he says, just see how this hill has appeared in person and bestowed mercy upon us. Govardhan Hill, assuming any form he wishes, will kill any residents of the forest who neglect him. Therefore, let us pay our obeisances, our homage to him for the safety of ourselves and our cows. The members of the cowherd community then returned with Krishna to their village. So after this whole little ceremony, they all went back to their village. And you would have thought, oh, well, all's well that ends well, but not quite. When Indra understood that his sacrifice had been put aside, he became furious with King Nanda and the cowherd men, who were accepting Krishna's verdict and accepting him as being supreme. That was not going to fly with Indra. Angry Indra sent forth the clouds of universal destruction known as the Samvartaka. Imagining himself to be the supreme controller, Indra spoke as follows. He said, "Just see how these cowherd men living in the forest have become so greatly intoxicated by their prosperity. They have surrendered to an ordinary human being, Krishna, and have offended the gods. They have acted inimically toward me by taking shelter of this ordinary human being, Krishna, who thinks himself very wise, but who is simply a foolish, arrogant, talkative child." He then ordered the clouds of destruction, "Now go and remove their pride and bring their animals to destruction. I will follow you and bring with me the swift and powerful wind gods to decimate the cowherd village." The clouds of destruction went to the cowherd pastures of Vrindavan and began to torment the inhabitants by pouring down torrents of rain upon them. Propelled by the fearsome wind gods, the clouds blazed with lightning bolts and roared with thunder as they hurled down hailstones. The clouds released torrents of rain as thick as massive columns. The earth was submerged in the flood, and high ground could no longer be distinguished from low. The cows and other animals shivering from the excessive rain and wind, the cowherd men and ladies were pained by the cold, and they approached Krishna, who is known as Govinda, because he gives shelter to everyone. He protects the cows, he protects the senses, he protects everyone. He's known as Govinda. So they came to him for shelter, trembling from the distress brought about by the severe rainfall. And they said, Krishna, Krishna, O most fortunate one, please deliver the cows from the wrath of Indra. You are so affectionate to your devotees. Please save us. Have you ever been in a rainstorm, a thunderstorm, a hailstorm, or when all of those came together like really, really powerful rain? I know what it's like a little bit. I've grown up in Mumbai, which has got massive rains, the monsoons, but this was nothing like that. It was worse than that. You know, you've heard about some of these, I think they call it atmospheric rivers, right? Where it's just like a river of rain pouring down upon the people. It's been happening in California in the last few years. And it can be quite devastating. You see how cars are washed away. You see how houses are washed away. Well, that was what was happening in Vrindavan. It was quite horrific. And people just didn't know what to do. They were terrified. So Krishna said to himself, Seeing the residents of Vrindavan distraught by the onslaught of hail and blasting wind, the Supreme Godhead Hari understood that this was the work of angry Indra. He said to himself, because we have stopped his sacrifice, Indra has caused this unusually fierce, unseasonable rain, together with terrible winds and hail. By my mystic power, I will completely counteract this disturbance caused by Indra. Demigods like Indra are proud of their opulence, and out of foolishness they falsely consider themselves the Lord of the universe. I shall now destroy such ignorance. I want you to pay attention to these words. Perhaps you've come across people like this. People who think they're untouchable, that is to say, they cannot be defeated by anyone, who are proud, who are arrogant, whose power has got to their head, and who are out to create havoc on this earth for the sake of power. There are such power-hungry people, ranging from the dictators that we see who wage war, to others who want to disrupt democracies, to people who are not interested in peace, but to them it's power above all else. In much the same way Indra was exhibiting his own arrogance, his own pride, and creating havoc for the people of Vrindavan. Krishna then says, I will now destroy such ignorance. God steps in when that happens and makes sure that such people cannot persist. He says, since the demigods are supposedly endowed with the mode of goodness, they're supposed to be like good people. They're supposed to be endowed with the mode of goodness. The false pride should not affect them. When I break the false pride of those bereft of goodness, my purpose is to bring them relief. Think about what it must be like if you are a good human being and if pride and arrogance have taken over your mind. What kind of stress and tension would you be in? What kind of agitation would you be experiencing? And the agitation that you're producing for everybody else around you. Then Krishna says, I must protect the cowherd community, for I am their shelter and they are my family. After all, I have taken a vow to protect my devotees. So this is very important. Krishna has taken a vow to protect his devotees. Krishna says very clearly in the Gita, my devotee shall never be vanquished. We must know this for a fact, and we must truly embrace this thought and take it to heart and know that we are protected, we are loved, and he will never abandon us. Having said this, Krishna, who is the supreme Godhead, Vishnu himself, picked up Govardhan hill with one hand and held it aloft. Just as a child holds up a mushroom, he was holding it on his little finger, his pinky. Now, what was he holding? An entire hill, 14 kilometers around, 9 miles around. And you might say, that's impossible. And you'd be right, unless that person you're talking about is the supreme being, God. So this is what this would have looked like. Krishna is there standing under that hill, and so are all the other residents of Vrindavan. That's him, a 7-year-old boy, holding up the hill. And the interesting thing you'll see in this next picture is that everyone else is trying to help him. The cowherd men are putting their sticks up to try to hold up the hill, as if the putting up their sticks would actually help. Yeah. And there he is, lifting the Govardhan hill. So Krishna then said, O mother, O father, O residents of Braj, Vrindavan, if you wish, you may now come under this hill with your cows. You should have no fear that this mountain will fall from my hand, and don't be afraid of the wind and rain. So he created it like a huge giant umbrella, and the entire village, along with their cows and animals and wagons and everything else, came and was right under that, while he held it up on his pinky. For how long? For 7 days and nights. You should have no fear that this mountain will fall from my hand, and don't be afraid of the wind and rain, for your deliverance from these afflictions has already been arranged. Their minds thus pacified by Krishna, they all entered beneath the hill, where they found ample room for themselves and all their cows, wagons, servants, and priests, and all other members of the community as well. Krishna, forgetting hunger and thirst, put aside all considerations of personal pleasure, stood there holding up the hill for 7 days as everyone gazed upon him. When Indra observed this exhibition of Krishna's mystic power, he became most astonished. Pulled down from his platform of false pride and his intentions thwarted, he ordered the clouds to desist. So if you remember his earlier statements, he was referring to Krishna as this stupid, foolish, arrogant boy. What does he know? What does he think of himself, right? That's what he was saying earlier. If we go back to his statements earlier, you'll see. Yeah, he was talking about Krishna. He was saying that yeah. So, yeah, he was saying all kinds of nasty things at that point. So Krishna broke his pride, and now what happened was, when the residents of Vrindavan saw the fierce wind and rain had now ceased, the sky had become clear of rain clouds, and the sun had risen, Krishna said, my dear cowherd men, please go out with your wives, children, and possessions. Give up your fear. The wind and rain have stopped, and the river's high waters have subsided. After collecting their respective cows and loading their paraphernalia into their wagons, everyone left for their village. Then the Supreme Personality of Godhead put down the hill in its original place just as it stood before. All the residents of Vrindavan were overwhelmed with ecstatic love, and they came forward and greeted Krishna according to their individual relationships with him. Some embraced him, others bowed down to him, and so forth. So everyone had a unique relationship with him. Some treated him as their son and their child. Many of the women, despite not just his mother, many considered him his friend. Many considered him their lover. Mother Yashoda, Mother Rohini, Nanda, his father, and Balaram, his brother, all embraced Krishna. Overwhelmed with affection, they offered him their blessings. In the heavens, all the demigods sang the praises of Krishna and showered flowers on him in great satisfaction. They resoundingly played their conch shells and kettle drums and sang. Krishna, Balaram, and their friends then went off to tend their cows. Back to business as usual. The cowherd girls returned to their homes, singing joyfully about the lifting of Govardhan Hill and other glorious deeds performed by Krishna, who had so deeply touched their hearts. Now, the people of the village, especially the cowherd men, they gathered around. They were astonished when they saw Krishna's activities, such as lifting Govardhan Hill. They were unable to understand his transcendental potency. They approached King Nanda, his father, and asked, "Since this boy performs such extraordinary activities, how is it that he was born amongst worldly people like us? How can this 7-year-old boy playfully hold up a great hill, Govardhan, with one hand, just as a mighty elephant holds up a lotus flower?" As a mere infant, who had hardly yet opened his eyes, he drank the breast milk of the powerful demoness Putana and then sucked out her very life air as well, so he killed her. Once, when only 3 months old, little Krishna was crying and kicking up his feet as he lay under a huge cart. Then the cart fell and turned upside down simply because it was struck by the tip of his toe, and there was a demon under that cart as well. He killed him as well. At the age of 1, while sitting peacefully, he was taken up into the sky by the demon Trinavarta. But baby Krishna grabbed the demon's neck, causing him great pain, and thus killed him. Once his mother tied him with ropes to a mortar because she had caught him stealing butter. Then, crawling on his hands, he dragged the mortar between a pair of trees and pulled them down. Another time, when Krishna was tending the calves in the forest together with Balaram and the cowherd boys, the demon Bakasura came with the intention of killing Krishna. But Krishna seized this inimical demon by the mouth and tore him apart. So what was happening was that these various asuras, right, were people who had mystical power, and they were appearing in various forms to try and kill Krishna. This was ordered by the king Kans, who was trying to send various beings. He'd heard about this personality Krishna who had born. He'd been told that there is this person who's going to kill him. The king had been told that. So he was sending various people in various disguises who used their mystical powers to appear as these different demons that you see. And they'd all come to kill Krishna, thinking that they could. But each case, Krishna actually just, with his bare hands, killed them. No weapon was used. None whatsoever. This is the demon Bakasura. Then came the demon Vatsa, who disguised himself as a calf and entered among Krishna's calves. But Krishna killed him too, using his body, enjoyed the sport of knocking kapitha fruits down from the trees. So he knocked some fruits down from the trees that he wanted to pick. Then, along with Balaram, Krishna killed the jackass demon and all of his friends, thereby securing the safety of the Talavan forest, which abounded with fully ripened palm fruits. So they wanted to get those fruits, but these jackasses were there, the demonic creatures who were stopping anyone from coming there. After arranging for the mighty Balaram to kill the demon Pralamba, Krishna saved Vrindavan's cowherd boys and their animals from a forest fire. That's the killing of Pralamba. And thereafter the putting out of the forest fire, Krishna literally just swallowed up the fire. Krishna then chastised the most poisonous serpent Kaliya, and after humbling him, he drove him forcibly away from the lake of the Yamuna. In this way, he made the water of the river free of the snake's powerful poison. Here he is dancing upon the hoods of Kaliya. Then they ask, Dear Nanda, how is it possible that all of us cannot give up our constant affection for your son? We're always thinking about him. And how is it that he is so spontaneously attracted to us? So now you actually need to consider this point. There are a lot of people who believe that God is just a light and energy. He's impersonal. He has no form. The word they use in Sanskrit is nirakar. He has no form. Nirgun, meaning he has no qualities. How much can you meditate on something that has no form, no qualities, no pastimes, no nothing? And how easily can you focus your mind on nothing? Your mind will constantly be churning away with all kinds of something to distract you and pull you away. But now think of what happens when you fall in love with someone. Or think of when you have a baby. Or think of when you have someone who's your best buddy and you hang out together. Your mind is always with that person. You're so easily fixated on them. You have no other thought but them. Especially if you truly love this person. Especially if you really enjoy this person. If your baby, think about you. The mother's always thinking about her baby. No matter what. It's hard for her to get away even. A person who's in love is always thinking about their beloved. Now that very natural instinct is what God uses to make us attracted to Him, to make us meditate on Him. And it is the easiest form of meditation, therefore. When there is a form, therefore He is known as having a form and yet being formless. He is known as having qualities and having no material qualities. He has no physical form, as in no material form. He has a spiritual form. So that's why they're saying, we cannot give up our constant affection for your son. They're constantly thinking about him. And how is it that he's so spontaneously attracted to us? What does he see in us? Why does he like us? They don't understand. On one hand, this boy is only 7 years old. And on the other hand, we see that he has lifted the great Govardhan hill. Therefore, O king of Braja, a doubt about your son arises within us. Who is he? At this point, King Nanda replied, he says, Oh, dear cowherd man, just hear my words and let all your doubts concerning my son be gone. Some time ago, the sage Garga Muni spoke to me as follows about this boy. So this was the time when Krishna was just a baby and Garga had come for the name-giving ceremony. There's actually a ceremony like that in which the name is given to the child. So Garga, the great sage, had said to King Nanda, the father of Krishna, he said, O cowherd man, so your son Krishna appears as an incarnation in every millennium. In the past, he assumed 3 different colors, white, red, and yellow. Now he has appeared in a blackish color. For many reasons, this beautiful son of yours sometimes appeared previously as the son of Vasudev. Therefore, those who are learned sometimes call him Vasudev. For this son of yours, there are many forms and names according to his transcendental qualities and activities. So according to his qualities and activities, he has different names. The word Krishna itself means one who attracts everyone. It comes from the root akarshit, to attract. And he attracts everyone because he is the epitome of beauty. He is the source of all beauty. He is the source of all love. He is the source of all knowledge, of all wisdom. He is the most powerful, the most strong, and he is the one who owns everything. Everything, including us, is owned by him. So he says, the sage is telling the father of Krishna, his transcendental qualities are known to me, but people in general do not understand them. To increase the transcendental bliss of the cowherd residents of Gokul or Vrindavan, this child will always act auspiciously for you, and by his grace you will surpass all difficulties. O Nanda, as recorded in history, when there is an irregular, incapable government, and when honest people are being harassed and disturbed by thieves, This child appears in order to curb the rogues and to protect the people and enable them to flourish. Krishna says this in the Bhagavad Gita, Paritranaya sadhunam, vinashaya cha dushkritam. So vinash means destruction of who? Dushkritam, those who are miscreants, those who create havoc on earth, those who trouble others, to destroy them, and paritranaya sadhunam, to give pleasure to the devotees, to show them how much they are loved. I appear millennium after millennium in my original transcendental form. Then Garga continues. He says, demons cannot harm the demigods who always have Vishnu on their side. So when God is on your side, you become a deva, a demigod. And in that condition, when God is on your side, when you have accepted him and he has accepted you, when you have placed your heart with him and he has given his heart to you, no demon can touch you. No demonic energy can harm you, and no negativity can affect you. You need to know this for a fact. Krishna says, my devotee will never be vanquished. That is his solemn promise. Similarly, any person or group attached to the all-auspicious Krishna cannot be defeated by enemies. Therefore, O Nanda, this child of yours is as good as the Supreme Being Narayan. In his transcendental qualities, opulence, name, fame, and influence, he is exactly like Narayan, Supreme Being. Thus, you should not be astonished by his activities. After Garga Rishi spoke these words to me and returned home, I began to consider that Krishna, who keeps us free from trouble, is God. Hearing this, the residents of Vrindavan became enlivened. Their perplexity was gone, and they worshipped Nanda and Krishna with great respect. I want you to know something else. Much as they heard all this, Krishna would make them forget it. He did not want them to think of him as God. He did not want them to be thrilled by the fact that he lifted Govardhan Hill. He would make them forget these things, and he would make them just be in awe of him. He wanted them to love him for who he is, not because of what he does. And although he did extraordinary things, he wasn't interested in people worshiping him for that. Just as you and I, we don't want someone to love us because of the way we look or because of the possessions we have. Then that becomes motivated. It becomes a kind of exploitation. It becomes a way of using us. God doesn't want to be loved like that. He wants to be loved for who he is, because he's so sweet, because he's so adorable, because he does such cute things. That's why he wants to be loved. Not for anything else. Not for what you can get out of him. That's not love. When you love someone because of what you can get out of them, that's not love. Indra became angry when his sacrifice was disrupted. So now we're getting to the main lesson of this. And thus he caused rain and hail to fall on Vrindavan, accompanied by lightning and powerful winds, all of which brought great suffering to the cowherd people, the animals and women there. When Krishna, who is by nature always compassionate, saw the condition of those who had only him as their shelter, he smiled and lifted Govardhan Hill with one hand, just as a small child picks up a mushroom to play with it. Holding up the hill, he protected the cowherd community. May he, Govinda, the lord of the cows and the destroyer of Indra's false pride, be pleased with me and with all of us. So that is this humble prayer of this part of the Bhagavatam. And if you have any questions, please write them down. Just one more time, if you'd like to see Krishna holding up Govardhan Hill, it's a sight to behold. So any questions at all, please write them down. I'd be happy to answer your questions. If you're joining us on Zoom, on YouTube, on Instagram, just write down your questions. I'll see them and I'll be glad to answer. Anybody at all? What do you think of all this? What do you make of this? Do you find it impossible? Do you find it incredible? Do you find it like, oh, this can't be? What are your thoughts? Or do you find it absolutely adorable that this is what God is? After all, this is not something that any other human could do. This is not something that any other person has ever done. These feats, these incredibly impossible acts were performed by Krishna effortlessly. But it is not for that reason that we adore him. These are just incidental things. We adore him just because he's so adorable. All right. Swati. This increases my faith in God. Oh, I love you saying that. It's such a wonderful thing to say. Yes. This increases our faith. Why does it increase our faith? Let's go deeper. Because then we know what he's like. We know what he's capable of. We know that we're not alone in this world. We know that he's with us always. And when we know that, there is hope. When we know that, there is peace. And there is no longer this huge worry or anxiety of living. Swati writes, there is someone very powerful looking out for us. You are so right, Swati. Yes. To know that there is someone this powerful, this amazing, who has looked out for his devotees back then and continues to look out for us even now is very reassuring. See, we all suffer from anxiety, from fear. The antidote to fear is when you have trust, when you have faith, when you have a sense of belonging to the most powerful being of all. Once you know that he's got your back, that he will not let you down, that he will always be there for you, and try it for yourself. Really build a connection with him and you will see it for yourself. You will see it for yourself. He's there for you. It's the most beautiful experience. You live your life differently then. You live your life without fear. How many of you can say that? I live my life without fear. I mean, there's a part of us that is always going to be a little fearful. But by hearing these things, by connecting with God, especially on a regular basis, if you chant his names every day, if you read about him every day, then you will find yourself in that energy, in that vibration, in that space where he always resides. And you will feel him. You will feel him in his name. You will feel him in his pastimes. You will feel him as you read about these things. And you will know from within, not from your head even, from within, that you are safe and you are cared for and you are loved. And this is what we've all been wanting. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your presence. Thank you so much. Jai Shri Krishna. Hare Krishna. I'll see you next week. Here every Tuesday at 7 p.m. on Pacific time and 10 p.m. Eastern. And if you're in India, Wednesday, 7:30 a.m. right now. When it becomes daylight saving time, that'll change. Okay, see you next time.